little squares to know what's going on behind that. So thanks for giving us a little peek. I know it's a lot more than that, and I really, I'm grateful to get to spend this time together and put our minds on these ideas. And as I said, I'm excited about this class because I'm not going to be doing too much talking. It's just going to be discussion. We have time to review. I want to just give you all a preview for the next few weeks so you see what I mean. The idea for today is to quickly do the quiz from last week, from class 10, which is pretty comprehensive, aka it's like all the questions from the homework. Then maybe I'll save this for the end of class, but wanted to just take you all through the class 10 meditation so you sort of feel like, one, that you've done it, so that will go towards your homework, but also kind of an example of what an analytical meditation actually is. So I realized that a lot of the assigned meditations are analytical meditations, and that might be a new form of meditation for you. So I just figured we could do that together, but let's save that maybe for the end of class. And then we're going to do half of the final exam review today. So that's 14-ish questions, or however much we get through. And then that gives us space for next week. Love to hear if any of you, if everyone is sort of like, I haven't done class 1 meditations yet, or I haven't done class 2 yet. We can, again, do a meditation together, spend time on it, so you can feel like you're getting that experience, which is required if you are submitting the homework. And then we'll finish our final exam review. And then I'm really excited about this. So May 5th, I know we've been talking for most of this course about May 5th as the vow ceremony date, right? Which you all were invited to either as people who want to take on these vows, or, right, you have the option of just experiencing that sort of occasion just to plant the seed in your mind. Maybe it's what a lot of you were saying. Maybe you have that flavor of, I want to take the vows, right? And wanting that to grow. And that can happen if you're in a room and you get to rejoice in others who are deciding to take on those commitments. So anyways, that is going to happen when we can all safely be together and at 3 Joules. So know that that's still coming. But while we're in this sort of limbo, I'm really excited. He's actually here. I think he's making dinner, but to have almost like an interview style class where we can just openly ask questions of Hector and ask him to share as much as he can about not just practicing these vows for a few months, like, Emmett and I, but for over 20 years, right? And for before that, 9 years of going back and forth, of not having the vows, but living as if he did, and coming up against that hesitation or that, should I do this, or do I know them well enough? All those doubts that many of you were expressing. So like a lifetime of experiences that we get to mine from, and he's really graciously offered to just be open with us if we have any specific questions around practice, specifically, the practice of being a bodhisattva. So I hope that that's super exciting to you all. I'm really excited, and let's start thinking about your questions now. So, you can definitely chime in live, but if you have anything in mind, you could even chat it now, and I'll keep a tab of all of them, or email or text me, or however you need to get it to me, because I'd love to give him a heads up there. But you can be as open and curious as you want to be. So I hope that's exciting for everyone. Okay. Now I know people are in various sort of positions and scenarios, but just take a moment to check in with your mind. We'll do a mini meditation and then open the mandala. Yeah? And I'll guide. I think everyone is muted. Yes. Okay. So wherever you are, it can be a formal meditation posture, or it can be something to indicate to your body and mind that you're about to do something different. And first things first, just get curious about the sounds around you. No need to demand perfect silence. Just feel into the perfect background music for this moment. And then to that symphony, add the subtle sound of your own breathing. Deep, full inhales. And complete release on the exhale. Just continue to establish a slow and steady rhythm with the breath. And let it be a bridge from your day so far, whatever it may have been, and into this next moment. Just staying with the breath, tugging the mind back from anywhere it may have wandered. You might have to do this a few times. And starting to come into a motivation for showing up today for this call, for this class. So to start, how I often need to start is to let go of the story I've been telling myself today of who I am or what I should be doing or need to be doing. Take a weight off the shoulders, even letting go of feeling sorry for myself. And feeling the walls of the heart soften, moving into that attitude of gratitude that Kirby was talking about. Expanding your whole consciousness to include the world as you're experiencing it right now. Maybe it even cracks your heart open a little. All that beauty, all that pain. And from this place of openness, of surrender, even, dare to imagine what a perfect world would look like and feel like. What if everyone received the ultimate medicine, the specific wisdom they needed to wake up? The end of anxiety, of to-do lists, of doubt, of laziness. Perfect clarity. Just try to hold your mind on this vision. Keeping this meditation cradled in your mind as you make this offering. It's an offering to the being that you are becoming. Sashi, Puki, Juxing, Metok, Cham. Rab, Lingshin, Inde, Gampadi. Sangye, Shingdu, Nikte, Wargi. Jokun, Namdak, Shingla, Drupar, Shuk. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Sangye Chiram Soki Choknam Jangchub Bardu Dakni Kapsuchi Daki Chinyen Gipe Salam Ki Jola Penchir Sanye Jupar Sangye Chiram Soki Choknam Jangchu Bardu Dakni Kapsuchi Daki Chinyen Gipe Sanam Jola Penchir Sangye Drupar Shok Sangye Chiram Soki Choknam La Jangchu Bardu Dakni Kapsuchi Daki Chinyen Gipe Sanam Ki Jola Penchir Sangye Drupar Shok. Holding this motivation as much as you can. Slowly fluttering the eyes open. Okay. Apologies if you heard my crazy family. Mackenzie, get ready. I even tell them, I'm like, family, once a week. It's this class. Everyone, I don't know how much you guys could hear, but that's what we're working with. Okay, hope everyone's here, whatever that means to you. And let's begin. So what I was thinking was just talking through the quiz and then using breakout rooms for final exam review. How does that feel? Yeah? Okay. Got Allison in again. So maybe I'll just see based on who's nodding if someone wants to chime in. But let's just take this as a quick review from last week, which remember was sort of we're at that point we're done with all the lists of the vows, and it was more, okay, I've decided to take these on, or I've decided to act as if I had them. What would I need to do? Right. And so that's what this first quiz question is about. It's what are the things I need to have in my mind in order to keep these vows well? And I think it's funny because none of them actually, mention having them memorized, uh, which was just interesting because I heard a lot of you say that. But really, take this list as like, if I just have these 5 states of mind to whatever degree, it makes you a candidate for feeling confident that you could have these vows take root in your mind, right? It's like all these things are like the fertilizer. If your mind is the soil and you're planting the vows in it. Lots of metaphors there, but I know you all know what I'm talking about. So I have the list here. So you see the 5. Does anyone sort of have lingering questions about this or uncertainty about any of them? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Just one question about the third one, because it just says take vows like 1 and 2. Is that like when you're taking the actual vows themselves, if you keep in mind 1 and 2, it will help you in the future keeping your bodhisattva vows well?
Exactly. Yeah. So it has to do with that initial motivation of actually taking on the vows, right? Because there's lots of reasons people could take these vows. It could be to impress a teacher, or because His Holiness the Dalai Lama is in town and he's giving these vows in these massive ceremonies. So let me take them, right? Or there's all sorts of motivations that you could have for taking them. And it's saying here, if the reason you actually take them is based on number 1 and 2, that in itself is like this protective thing in your mind that's going to allow them to actually take root and then grow. One and 2 being you actually do have this ultimate goal somehow, right? There's the radical mindset of there's another state of mind, there's another state of being that's possible to achieve. Others have achieved it and they've then shared this instruction manual for getting to that same place. It's called enlightenment. It means freedom completely from any and all suffering. So if that's your motivation, and then wanting to get to that place, not just for yourself, but because you see that everyone else is in that same boat or worse, if that's your reason completely, then, and you take the vows based on that, you're already, that's 1, 2, and 3 right there. Any other questions on these? So 4 was what we were talking about with, actually this was cool. Like, I think it was after most people had left, but Tyler asked, he was like, oh, if your house was burning down and you had to grab your passport or your vow book, which one would you grab? It was a cool question. The right answer, or, the one I would hope comes spontaneously to me is, oh, I'd grab my vow book, because the stuff I have in my mind can take me places my passport never could, right? But really trying to start to think like that. What is the most prized possession that I have? The one that's not going to expire in a literal sense, right? That's not just going to be like every other material possession that we have. Even forget material, even this body and everything I'm doing to take care of this body, getting stronger, eating well, all of that. There's only one way out. It doesn't matter at a certain point how healthy I am, right? And so, but the whole idea here is the mind, different game. And so if I can start to develop this reverence for these vows in my own mind, like those are the most precious things I have. If you can start to do that, that's how you get to know them. That's how they become memorized in your mind. It's that importance you attach to them. So that's number 4, to keep your vows well. And then you do want to have this sense of to avoid breaking them. And it's actually cool. The antidote here, or like the subtext here, is kind of what a lot of us did in the share around regular confessions, right? And like confessions to people who understand the gravity of what you did, right? Like I'm sure on any other Zoom call, you wouldn't necessarily be like, guys, I killed a cockroach, right? And expect anyone to sort of empathize with you. But you can say that here because we all have this shared understanding of the consequences of harming life, right? In a karmic sense. And so that is part of it. Regular confessions with people who understand like why it would feel good to get that off your chest, right? Not just a stranger. Like, okay, cool, I did my confession. I told random stranger that I killed a cockroach and I felt guilty about it. And then I shouldn't even say that. It's not about guilt, right? I think here this is regular confession has to be followed up with some sort of purification practice, which we've gone over that, the 4 steps. You can practice that with the cockroach example, right? Fine, you killed the cockroach, first instinct, or it was out of your hands, like Suzanne was saying. It was a decision by someone higher up, and I couldn't do anything about it, but I witnessed it. Fine, I witnessed some sort of harming of life in my consciousness. Step 1, just actually, it's what we already did, having the wish to air it out. Be like, okay, I witnessed it. If it's true that my mind records everything and then that grows at this crazy rate to then spurt out and produce my reality, I don't want to have the consequence of even killing a single little creature which has a consciousness, right? So step 1 is understanding that interplay. Step 2, it's not guilt. It's just that like, oh, I'm gonna get the result. I don't think I want it, right? It's that intelligent regret. And then, okay, maybe if even just for a day, I can not kill the cockroaches. Even if it's an hour. If it's an hour, it's an hour. It's fine, but you need to pick that reasonable window of restraint. And then the most fun part, I think, where you can really get creative is the antidote. So I would start to think, I almost think of like confessions are like the step 0 before the 4-step purification, right? So it's not just like you confess and okay, cool, I'm good. So you then have to do something about it. So those were the 5 things we went over to keep our vows well. That feel good? Cool, I see nods. Then question 2, 3, and 4 are all encompassed on this slide. So this was about the ways that they can be broken. And here I'll actually talk you through. So this was also the assigned meditation for class 10. So let's say I was doing this meditation as a contemplation or as an analytical meditation. What that would mean is, this is the way I would literally do it, is I would look at this slide first probably and just go through this list and be like, okay, do I understand number 1? Okay, of course I would break it if I didn't know it. Do I understand 2? Oh, it's saying that even if I'm careless or forgetful, I could break a secondary vow. Number 3, okay, if my mind was overtaken by anger or jealousy, attacked by mental afflictions, then that would result in a broken vow. Or if I just didn't care about them, if I didn't think they were important, if I disrespected my vows and the resulting state of the vows, enlightenment, a Buddha. So first I would just be like, okay, do I understand them? Then close your eyes, come to the cushion, and in analytical meditation, literally the way you would do it, you sit there and you think, okay, let me review 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me go back and review 1, 2, 3, 4, and add a little bit of color to them. Like, how would this show up in my life? Cool, let me see now if I can remember 4, 3, 2, 1. And now can I remember 3, and then 1, and then 4, and then 2? And it's literally that. It's like mental gymnastics, right? And then you could go, and then you again go through the list. Can I remember 1 through 4 and their antidotes? Like, what's the thing I would do what's the opposite of not knowing my vows, and go through it like that. It's just like working out the mind. That's one way to think of analytical meditation. I guess that more has a flavor of a review meditation. If you really wanted to do the analytical meditation on it, it's actually what someone here said it, I forget who, but it's like a debate with your own mind. So you'd go through and be like, okay, well, would having a mental affliction attack, like would being overcome by anger really cause me to break a vow? Like, why can't I promise to love all beings and have anger in my mind at the same time? And just debate yourself on that until you can get to a place of not believing it because you saw it on the list, but some sort of internal logical understanding. So that's what an analytical meditation is. You literally like take sides in your mind and you duke it out. And so this encompasses question 3, which is what are the causes of breaking the vows? The opposites, which can become the practice, right? The antidotes to that. And then there was specifically a question about, could you break a secondary vow out of forgetfulness, which you could. And one thing about breaking a vow, it's actually, this literally just happened to me before this class. I was helping my mom unload the dishwasher and I dropped a dish and it shattered on the ground. And it made me think of this because when you break a vow, at least out of something like forgetfulness or out of, I broke the vow of protecting life by squashing the cockroach. You're not doing that. You're not breaking the vow into a million little shards of glass that are impossible to put back together. It's not like that. Because we are literally creating these vows moment by moment, right? They're not these vessels that can break. They're these like clay actually clay is that's a cool metaphor because like clay, if any of you know, or have worked with clay, if you were to drop a vessel and it shattered, all you have to do is stick those shards in a bucket of water and it becomes workable clay again. And you could start building all over again. Right? And I really think you can think of your vow that way. It's not glass that's brittle and it's going to break permanently. It's clay that might shatter, so you might have to mold it up again, but it's moldable. So hopefully that provides some solace.
Can I ask you a question, Supriya, about these two things?
Yeah.
Because I think it comes back to this whole like laziness and klesha. Like I have a hard time seeing the difference between 2 and 3 as like a klesha as a mental affliction. But are those like just very strong things like anger, jealousy, doubt, like?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I just sometimes categorize like laziness and carelessness as the kind of those things as well.
Yeah. I would think about it, Jeremy, as almost like a meditation metaphor because of the antidotes they give. So the way I would think about carelessness, laziness, forgetfulness are like when you've told yourself you want to be meditating on the breath, but you're starting to daydream and you catch yourself. Right? That's more the flavor of number 2, of like that constant, remember we talked about the watchfulness and the recollection of the like alarm bell that's going off in your mind of, oh, I'm veering away from what I want it to do, and then coming back. Versus the klesha attack is when you're in meditation and you've fallen asleep. Or you're in meditation and you're like 5, text messages into a fantasy conversation that you're having with your best friend. I don't know, wherever your mind goes. So you're thinking about lunch and what you want to make for lunch, right? You're like completely off in a different space where you couldn't possibly hold your meditation object in your mind at the same time, right? You can't think about lunch and meditate on love at the same time in the context of this meditation. So I would think about it like that, like degrees.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because I think when I look at the words, I'm trying to like get to like what's underneath them, so to speak. Like what is the thing that would cause those things? like, and what's the difference between their causes?
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this was part of this list explicitly, but it does look like it's sort of in order of from least to worst serious. So I would say you could think about it that way. That's my personal addition to the commentary. I don't think that's like, it's not said that that's how they are ordered, but it kind of makes sense to me that you could think about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is a right answer. I just like the things that you've said so far. So it's been really helpful. Yeah.
And Emmett, I liked your question. Emmett's asking, does this course go over any of the meditations for causing or creating bodhicitta? Bodhicitta being that state of mind of every single action you're taking, doing it for the sake of all beings. It's like what Kirby was saying, like, can that little addendum be on everything? Oh, I'm washing my hands for the sake of all beings. I'm bored and distracted for the sake of all being, like every little movement of mind. This course does not, Emmett, like explicitly go through any meditations for causing it, but we do talk about hopefully hopefully that connection is starting to become clear of why trying to keep these vows would force your mind into that experience. But it doesn't explicitly. There are 2 specific meditations that cause that. Those are presented in ACI 1, I know, and probably other courses as well. Cool. So,
Supriya?
Yeah.
Before we move on from that one, there were 2 things. One is the knowing your vows, and a lot of people have said memorize. I can't memorize the 4 things I need to get from a grocery store, so there's no way I can memorize these 4 things. But I know what these 4 things are when I look at the list.
Yep.
But
Cool.
your vow book has the vows. It's understanding them that's the key thing, not the memorizing, because we're not all hardwired to memorize. So don't anyone beat themselves up because they can't memorize things. And then the other thing is, to Jeremy's question about klesha attacks, it's identifying your worst enemy. And you guys might find this hard to believe, but mine is anger. I have a really quick temper. And that's a big difference between carelessness and laziness. You know, sometimes I forget to be nice to people because I'm busy and hectic life, etc. But being quick to anger, that's my worst enemy. So I'm aware of it. If someone bumps into me accidentally and it startles me or upsets me, I think that's the difference between 2 and 3 to me.
Yeah.
So just wanted to chime in.
That's amazing. Thanks. I'm so happy you're here, Thomas.
Thank you.
Yeah, and like, just to add to what Thomas said, when you take on these vows, you get reminders for which ones to practice and when, like explicitly, right? So your 6 times a day book, at least the way it's happened for me, is you get to join this amazing WhatsApp group that literally there's no side conversations in this thread. All it's designed to do is pop up 6 vows spaced out throughout the day. It's this big rotation table that we have that goes through all of our vows, the 10 non-virtues, the refuge commitments, all the Bodhisattva vows. And you get those little reminders on your phone, those 6 times a day. And then it's exactly what Thomas said, right? Can you see the vow pop up that says, no destroying towns and cities? And then understand, what does that actually mean, so that I can put it into practice. So you get to do that you get to really intimately get to know 6 vows a day. And then all the other ones, it's fine if they're background noise. Like, it's better background noise than what's usually background noise in our minds, or at least my mind, right? So even if it's a little flavor and you're sitting at the table and the vow hasn't popped up about dedicating the first bite of food, you have it as background noise in your mind, right? Because you remember studying that vow, and it will start to change that action. So just to add a little bit there, that's what we mean by like when you're practicing them, you have that. Okay, so I thought we could break up the final exam. I guess I'll leave it all to you since it's a small group. I was thinking to do breakout groups to talk about questions 1 through 7 and then 8 through 14, which we could hopefully get through by 9:30. Or do you all want to just stick together? I'll leave it to you. Does anyone feel strongly one way or another? Together?
Motion to stick
piggyback Sarah together.
Okay, let's stay together. So what I did is for each question, I just pulled the slide that I had already made with that answer. So I'm sort of giving it away. So maybe what I'll do is I'll read the question before we move to the answer. And then if anyone knows it, or remembers any part of it even, just chime in. So then it can become more of a conversation, because we're not going to go in depth on each question, right? We've done that in previous classes, but just trying to move our minds through the whole course, really. The final exam, the way to think about it is, this is Geshe Michael, right? The person who thought to like churn everything he studied for over 20 years in a monastery. And he was like, okay, if I were to give this to a Western audience, right? To like a culture that doesn't, that throws around the word karma without understanding it, that doesn't have intrinsic belief in past and future lives, like a completely different cultural context. How can I just get the essence of these things, of this philosophy? So the final exam I really like, because I feel like it's representative for the whole course, right? Like if you were to walk away with the 28 things to know from this course, they'll be encapsulated in the final exam. So it starts in the very beginning. If anyone remembers the principal commentary that we used for our study of the vows, the author's full name and dates.
The Highway for Bodhisattva.
Nice.
And it's by Je Tsongkapa.
Nice. You can't
The
usually...
dates I don't have memorized.
Okay, cool. Anyone have the dates off the top of their head?
I want to say it's
1457. No, 1357, 1419.
Nice. Nice. I heard a couple
I
people.
remember it by like 1314 and then 5719.
Cool.
Oh, handy. Yeah, honestly, for most final exams, you're like 50-50 if you mention Je Tsongkapa, you'll get the answer right. Either he is the source or he's the one who's given us the commentary on where these things come from. So I actually gave you number 2 here as well, which is remember there's that principal commentary, and then there's the summary source, like the thing that decodes it for us so that we can do something with this stuff, we can understand it, and that is String of Shining Jewels by Geshe Sewang Samdrup. If I remember correctly, he's a teacher of one of the Dalai Lamas. I don't remember which. But those are your questions 1 and 2, and I'll leave it up to you guys. You're welcome to fill out the final exam like real time right now. That's fine with me. Or just absorb this, and I will share these slides out after and do it then, but it's totally up to you. So, oops, wait, I said I would not do this. Oh, now you guys can see it. But the next question was, what's the short definition for bodhicitta taught by Lord Maitreya? Bonus points if you can remember something about the story, about who Lord Maitreya is. And you can just keep yourselves unmuted here if you want to chime in and you feel like you know these things.
I guess the definition is the wish to become all enlightened for all beings. But isn't the story that like he was like a farm herder or something on top of a hill that became fully enlightened, and Je Tsongkapa went to him for advice? Or am I confusing that with someone else?
That might be true. That's not the story I was thinking of.
Okay.
I don't know if I know that story. I'm thinking of a really specific one.
Is it the story when Maitreya licks the maggots out of the dog?
So who licks the maggots out of the dog?
Maitreya.
Master Asanga.
Maitreya's student. Who's his student?
Master Asanga.
Master Asanga. And Maitreya is the dog.
Lord Maitreya is the dog. Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
Cool. Yeah, so if any of you remember that story from a few classes ago, I won't tell it all now because I'll cry, but it's there. It's in one of the recordings. It's a really beautiful story. But think of,
At
sorry.
the end of the story, don't they fly off to the Buddha like paradise together or something, and he like brings him home or something?
I don't know about that, but I know that his student then kind of dances around the village with his teacher, Lord Maitreya, on his back. And some people see him as like dancing around with a dead dog basically on his back, right? Because it's the pen or chew toy teaching, right? It's what people see is dependent on what's in their minds. And so there's so many like levels of lessons in that story. Okay, cool. So number 4 is name and describe the 3 sufferings and explain their cause. This was like the first class, I think. The 3 types of suffering. It's okay if you don't remember all 3, just give us 1 or 2.
I think the first one is the suffering of suffering, which is mental and physical suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then there's suffering of change, which has to do, I guess, with being born, getting older, getting sick, and then dying.
Mm-hmm.
Is the suffering of change honey on the razor blade?
Exactly. Yeah, like you could think about these first 2 sufferings just in the case of the pandemic right now, right? Suffering of suffering is the actual acute suffering that the thousands of millions of people are experiencing right now of sickness, right? That physical suffering. The suffering of change is like, I was talking to someone today, and it's the fact that even this situation, even this worldwide lockdown and pandemic is going to change, right? Even like everything in this realm with this, the way we're engaging with it has this self-destruct button built into it. If it comes into existence, it's going out of existence. So that's the suffering of change. And then the last one, anyone remember?
Before we go to the last one, guys, if you haven't done the one song dance party at 1:30 p.m. every day, first of all, join. But that is like the suffering of change to me because it's so fun, and then all of a sudden it's over.
Yeah, everyone's invited. I can share the details after this, or maybe Mackenzie, you can share it to the chat. But
yeah, I will.
One song only, no talking allowed. You log in, you dance for 1 song, and then, as Mackenzie said, as quickly as it starts, it's over.
It's done. Yeah.
So yeah, it is a nice example of the suffering of change. And then all pervasive suffering, I don't know, I think I heard someone say that.
Well, what Tanya said about suffering of change seemed to me like the definition for all pervasive suffering. So like that we age, get sick, and die.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, I think you're right. I think that one does fit into all pervasive suffering. The other sort of subtitle that's given on it is that it's the suffering of all unenlightened realms, like including hell realms, including pleasure realms, right? Where it's like eons of amazing bliss and pleasure, but even that is temporary. It's not yet full Buddhahood. I'm trying to remember where aging, sickness, and death come. And I think it actually might be number 2.
Supriya, I think it was 3.
Okay.
Because the honey on the razor blade and born, age, get sick, die, I'm pretty sure I had for 2 separate.
As separate ones. Okay, cool. I don't have my actual notes in front of me, but I
do, I'll check it.
Cool. Thanks for catching that. And then all of these, I feel like we've gone over this many times now, so hopefully it's just beaten over by the head. But one, I think this is good news, the fact that suffering is caused, right? Because if it has a cause, it can end by just ending the causes of it, right? If you choke off the causes, there won't be the result. So it's a blessing that this suffering is somehow caused. And here, the simple answer that the question is looking for, but also the answer, is that it's caused by mental afflictions. It's caused by these negative, ignorant states of mind. Ignorant because they're the result of not understanding how things work. And when we have these mental afflictions, it causes us to act in certain ways. You act, the karma is planted, the results guaranteed, and you're churning that cycle over and over. So all of these sufferings, it can boil down to the cause of being mental afflictions. If you want to boil it down even more, it's going to be ignorance. That's the root of that cause. Okay, question 5, don't get confused because there's many lists of 3, but here it's asking you for the 3 different types of morality that we went over.
Morality of refraining from bad deeds. And then there was one about collecting goodness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the third one on the top of my head.
Anyone remember the third one?
Working for living beings.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's doing the first 2, but for the sake of all beings. So yeah, you got the first 2 exactly right. Number 1, it's actually, number 1's like what Cuomo was saying during the press release, during his briefing today. I don't know if anyone watched it, but he just kept being like, we are motivated by, one thought, and that is do no harm. That's really the first one. It's refraining from bad deeds. It's do no harm, like in every way possible. And it's practicing that. It doesn't mean you're gonna not, that, from this moment on, you can't kill bugs. It's just when you kill the bug, think about it a little bit. That's how it starts. So do no harm. Morality of collecting goodness, which again, remember, collecting is that code word. Think here, the 2 collections of merit and wisdom. Maybe this is bringing things back, but think about it as the 6 perfections, right? And then the third one is doing 1 and 2 for the sake of all beings, right? With as unselfish a motive as you can. So those are the 3 types of morality.
Omo's been talking a lot about cause and effect. I love it. He's like, what we do now causes the future. And I'm like, yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, and so hopefully from here you can see how all of those secondary vows that we went over, they fit into 2 and 3, right? Remember how all those secondary vows mapped to the 6 perfections, and then we even got that list of secondary vows at the end, which map to the morality of working for all living beings. And then thanks for everyone in the chat who's clearing it up. I think Tanya, yeah, you got it right, and Allison, so that might have just been my misunderstanding. But the aging, getting sick, dying, and even being born is part of that last bucket of suffering, all pervasive suffering. All right, we are just plugging along. Oh, this one's great, especially if someone can remember the exact, or like the best line from the exact quote of Je Tsongkapa's reaction to the idea that practitioners of the secret way do not need to follow the other 2 sets of vows. So first you might have to give some context here. What are the 3 sets of vows that we went over?
The Prakti Moksha vows.
Cool, which you often also hear as
And non-virtues.
Separate. The Pratimoksha vows are separate from the 10 non-virtues. I'm just like Pratimoksha is the Sanskrit. How do you often hear it in English, just for those who might know it that way?
Individual freedom.
Yeah, exactly. Individual freedom or refuge vows are sort of umbrellaed within there. Yeah. That's first set of vows. Then second one.
Bodhisattva.
Great. This course. And then third set of vows.
The Tantric.
The Tantric vows, the secret the secret practices, right? And the morality associated with them. So we talked about how these vows build on each other, right? And so then I guess at that time, or still today, this is not, this view hasn't gone away, that somehow if you reach these advanced or secret or esoteric spiritual practices, you no longer need to care about killing bugs or keeping your bodhisattva morality, right? That there's that misconception. We still have it today, I'd say. So does anyone remember Je Tsongkapa's reaction to that?
Throw it away like so much garbage.
That's exactly what I that's like what stays in my mind from this. But yeah, exactly. He says it cuts at the roots of the Buddha's teaching. It's like a great rain of hail that destroys the tender crops of happiness of all living kind. Right? If that sprout of bodhicitta in our minds is really the happiness of all living beings, like, can we start to think about it that way? That this little sprout that we're cultivating of bodhicitta, that's the thing that's going to lead to the happiness of all living beings, right? You start to really want to protect that. Like, I wish I could send you all a photo right now, but my dad right now is, I'm not kidding, he has our old egg cartons, and in each little socket, he's put a little seed. And this is because it's too cold outside right now to plant them in the vegetable garden. So what he's done is all day long, he moves them around from one sunny corner of our house to another. And then at night, he puts desk lamps on top of them so that they're never without light and sustenance. Like, that's the way we care for things that are growing, right? These little seedlings. And so we're saying, can you do that same thing with these tender crops in our mind, this crop of bodhicitta, right? Of what we're trying to cultivate through this stuff. So that wrong idea destroys all of that, as if a hailstorm just came, and is an absolute misconception that should be thrown away like so much garbage.
Can we go over the relationship between the 3 types of vows?
Yeah. Does anyone want to chime in?
So, like, do they build off one another? Like, in my mind, did I first want to get free for myself and then I became attracted to, like, I must have one before I have 2?
Yes. They're like a ladder. They're like steps on a ladder. And so it's hard to skip them, right? They're like rungs of the ladder. So you're climbing somewhere and you need to use each one sequentially. And it's exactly what you said. Like, if you don't have a belief that you yourself are suffering and that there's a way out of suffering, and you don't believe it so strongly that you're willing to take promises to try to get out, individual freedom promises, pratimoksha vows, don't fool yourself and think that you could want that for someone else, which is the bodhisattva motivation, right? You have to have a real sense of refuge, of renunciation. Those mental attitudes that the first morality helps us practice in order to actually get to the point of, 1, loving all beings. Then once you love them, wanting their suffering to go away, right? It's really hard to have compassion for someone you don't love. So they all build on each other. And then the tantric vows, even more so. You need to have the basis of practice with this bodhisattva ideal. It's completely related those promises to bodhicitta and the activities of a bodhisattva.
It reminds me of, Proof of Future Lives, where they talk about how do you know what the Buddha said is true. And he says specifically what not to do, what to let go of, and what to take up. And I really think of as the pratimoksha is like what to not do. And the bodhisattva vows are what you take up in order to kind of reach a state of non-suffering.
Yeah, I like that. It reminds me of the metaphor of like the first set of vows are like the big boulders in your path, right? You're trying to get somewhere and there's just these giant rocks in the way. So it's like, okay, cool, stop lying, stop killing others, stop gossiping, all those pratimoksha commitments. But then you get more subtle. Then you want to get the little pebbles out of the way and the twigs and stuff. That's the bodhisattva morality, so that other people can start to come along with you. And then they say that tantric vows are even more fine. It's like brushing the dust away with the brush. They're more fine and they're more powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool to keep going? Okay. So number 7 and 8 are related. So 7 is describe the kind of person who can grant the vows, and then describe the kind of person who can take the vows. And they're long lists, so just throw out anything you remember from them.
Someone who's already taken the vows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember some of this is like they can be ordained or not ordained, male or female, someone who keeps their vows well and preferably could give you the tantric vows.
Yeah, Katie.
Yeah, that's like a good majority of that. Yeah, here you go. You have like the first few, you just said it word for word exactly.
So good.
They know the ceremony well as well, right? Like, so they know how to actually give them to you in a way that would feel meaningful. And then I like this too, able and willing to bring up the student, right? They're there for you when you then go to them and be like, I killed the cockroach again. I broke the vow. I forgot the vow. What do I do? Right? They're engaging in this not just lifelong, many lives long relationship with you until you get there. So they're able and willing to bring up the student. And then we talked about this other list of 6. What was this? Oh, remember this was, they to some degree have perfected the 6 perfections. Right? And so remember, these are what those 6 are. So like you see the number 1, if they've really perfected the perfection of giving, they're satisfied with what they have. They're not people that are hoarding things or just obsessed with shopping, because they understand that that's not the way to get happy ultimately. And then so on, right? They have perfection of morality, perfection of patience, not getting angry, perfection of joyful effort, which I like. It's not being lazy. It's being excited and deriving joy from doing good. And then perfection of concentration and perfection of wisdom. So that's that list. And then what about who can take the vows? It's actually a shorter list for that.
Well, it's also like very similar where it also has the ordained or not ordained, male or female, and tends to keep vows well. Pretty much a lot of them overlap.
Yep. There's one that's slightly specific, which it seems kind of obvious, but I think it is worth stating, right? So it's all the things Katie said. You don't have to take these vows, you don't have to become a monk or a nun. Actually, not that you can't, but they're actually specifically designed for you to be whoever you are in the world. It's saying, oh, you're a dancer? Cool, be a dancer for the sake of all beings. Right? You work at a desk? Great, work at a desk for the sake of all beings. It's absolutely engaging with the world and hopefully not adding to your plate. It's not another list of things to do. It's something that can color the way you do everything. Right? You're already eating. Why not make eating a bodhisattva activity by keeping this vow in your mind? You're already being invited to things or inviting other people to things. Why not remember the bodhisattva? I'm thinking of that vow, right? About accepting an invitation. Why not just color it with this promise? So, sorry, why did I go there? Yeah, it can be ordained or unordained. They intend to follow all 3 moralities. They know the vows. To Thomas's point, they understand them and are willing to remind themselves, right, to understand them. Intends to keep them to the best of their ability, and really wishes to have them. That's the one I think that is the most special here. It's the people who log on to Zoom calls. on Tuesday nights in the midst of a global pandemic to put their minds on these things, right? There's something in you that is attracted to this, and you're like, yeah, no, I really, and that doesn't mean I really want to take the vows. It is that I really want to take the vows, right? I really want to try. That's that little sprout in your mind that you gotta keep moving it to the sunny spots. You gotta keep putting the desk lamp on it so it grows, because it's rare. Okay, so we're on question 8. Question 9. So this is question 9 is list all 18 root downfalls of the Bodhisattva vows using the short verse forms. So I've summarized these on 2 slides for you all. It's kind of fun to go down memory lane with these. So we talked about each of these in a lot of detail. Let's not go through all of them now, but can someone remind us of the just the essence of the root downfalls? Like, why are they called root downfalls, for example? Anyone remember?
I mean, is it harder to restore them once you break them or something? Or that you can't restore them or something like that?
You can, but breaking them disqualifies you from something.
Reaching enlightenment in this life, reaching bodhicitta in this life.
From seeing direct perception of emptiness.
Under the influence of bodhicitta, exactly. Yeah, it's from that peak experience in meditation of this thing that we talk about so much, the pen and the chew toy thing, the fact that things lack a nature inherently from their own side. Things are there, but they're not the way they seem. You can understand that intellectually, you try to meditate on it, but then ultimately you have an experience of that, which fundamentally changes the way you then operate through your reality. That experience, it's like they say that the virtue that you need to actually have that experience is frozen if you end up breaking one of these root downfalls. And does anyone remember though what needs to be there in order to actually break a root downfall?
The 4 chains.
Exactly. Cool. The 4 chains, the 4 mental attitudes. I think that's coming in a later question, so we'll get to review what they are. But I just want to remind us, like, just start to think about this way, that it's very difficult to break a root vow. You have to do it consciously and purposefully. Like, I know this thing is designed to get me to enlightenment, and I'm going to break it. I'm going to destroy it. Then it is kind of like the glass shattering. It's really hard to put back together in terms of it. You're not able to have that experience, at least in this life. So this is the first 9, and then here are the second 9. So there's 18 of them. We spent 2 separate classes, right, on each of those lists. So there's a lot of details in there. There's a lot of exceptions. But hopefully it's starting to jog some memory, right? Like, for example, 15, right? You read this pop up on your phone. Okay, the root downfall of professing the complete opposite. What does that actually mean? Does anyone remember? What's the worst thing that you could profess the complete opposite of? Or that's a weird way to phrase that. Professing the complete opposite, aka lying. What's the worst thing you could lie about?
Saying you got that thing that breaking this downfall would disqualify you from.
Thank you for that very convoluted but correct answer.
Thing that you have what?
That thing that if you break one of these vows,
Okay.
you will not reach in this lifetime.
To say it more plainly, it's saying, hey, I have had that experience of seeing emptiness directly in meditation. And even more than that, come follow me, come do what I say, and you can have that experience too. Right? So many things going on at various levels. The majority of which being lying, the opposite of truth. And then the opposite of some sort of ultimate truth about the way things, about the way all things are. Right? And not in this way of like, right, we call this view correct view, right? You can either have a correct view about the world or not. And not correct in the way of like, I'm right and you're wrong, as much as correct in the way of, can this lead me out of suffering or not? The theory is that seeing things as empty of a nature from their own side, not seeing things as nothing, but seeing things as a projection that I'm forced to experience because of something in my mind. Like if I could actually do that, I would somehow be able to get out of suffering. That's what makes that view correct. And then even better, sometimes they say correct view, you also hear it as worldview. And I like that because it's this reminder that there's nothing in this world that that view does not apply to. So those like that's the way to completely transform this world into something incorrect, into something broken, into something with those three sufferings, into something completely free from those sufferings. Enlightenment, a paradise. So that is the little commentary on professing the complete opposite. Okay. The next two questions actually have to do with specific downfalls. So this question 10 is describe the result which is required for the 11th root downfall to occur. So the 11th root downfall is teaching emptiness, actually teaching this truth we were just talking about to someone who is not yet mentally prepared. Does anyone remember like the asterisk, commentary on that? Like, what does that really mean? How do you know when that vow has actually been broken completely?
I give up the wish.
Cool. That is the very final step. I think there might be a few in between, but that is the essence of it. Yes. Or that's one of the steps. Sorry, there's actually a few more, but yeah, you've gotten the start of it, Katie. It's as a result. So they and again, this isn't like a intellectual thing. It's not saying like they're less intelligent or somehow that, but it's either you haven't explained it clearly or they don't have enough of a context to receive an emptiness teaching. So they haven't studied it carefully. You give them this description that scares them or disturbs them. And then what Katie was saying, they have this little sprout of bodhicitta in their heart, but as a result of what you've told them, they get scared or disturbed and give that up. They're like, okay, this full enlightenment for the sake of all beings thing, that's too much. I'm gonna stick to personal liberation. I'm just gonna try to shoot for nirvana, right? So they take up Hinayana as a result of your teaching. Mm-hmm. Remembering that this is not like a value judgment on Hinayana. I think of Hinayana not necessarily as the lesser way, but as the foundational way, like the foundational path. You need to have that aspiration of not wanting to be reborn here and reaching a state free from mental afflictions. That is the foundation for wanting that for others as well. Just check the chat. Okay, cool. So that's that. The next question is also about a specific root vow. Oh yeah, the 18th root downfall and one other one before it are particularly serious and occur whether or not the 4 chains are present. Name this other root downfall and describe it briefly. Basically, what are the 2 worst root downfalls? that you could break even without the 4 chains present.
I mean, isn't that giving up the greater way? Like,
or here, I'll put them up so you can see them.
Like 9 and 18.
Yes, cool, thank you. I don't know what direction I'm going anymore. Here we go. There are 9 and 18. Root vow 9 and root vow 18 are the worst, the most serious, in that they can be broken even without the 4 chains present. We're about to go over what the 4 chains are. But also think about them as they are fundamentally opposite to the thing that you are promising to become. They're like fundamentally opposite to what a bodhisattva has going on in their mind, right? Number 18 being, you give up the wish. If a bodhisattva is someone who's trying to develop the wish, and you give up the wish, that, of course, it's this serious down. It's like giving your vows back, they say, this one.
I have a question about that, though.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like it could just be such a fleeting thing. I mean, like, it sounds like it's more of like, I will never, ever wish this again. I give it up right now in this moment. Like, there's this kind of a rejection. Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, what does that look like? As opposed to, like, oh, I'm not going to help that person because I'm too busy. I have to go to work right now. Like, I feel like you're not giving up the wish in that moment.
You're not if you're doing that. No.
So I'm trying to, like, think of some circumstance where you would, like, just be like, never again am I going to want this thing.
Yeah. I do think it's that. I think it is that sort of conscious decision of, I don't want to have the wish anymore. It could take the form of, like, I'm going to go on this other path instead.
Yeah.
I think it could have that. The way this has come up for me most is in the experience of the vows as being this giant blessing and gift. What I mean by that is there's this little thing in my mind that actually doesn't let me even get to this point because I've taken this vow. Does that make sense? It's like a blessing and a curse at the same time kind of thing, where, I don't know, it's like this ledge which I could always walk up to, but there's always something pulling me back a little bit. That's the way it comes up for me. And then the way you could practice it in daily life would be, how present is that wish in every single thing that I'm doing? That would be the way to practice it. It doesn't mean that if you don't have the wish present in every single thing that you're breaking it. But right, we talked about how there's a difference between breaking a vow and creating a vow through practice, right? You don't just have the vows because you're stopping yourself from breaking them. There's also the practice of actively doing the opposite of that vow. I'd say it's like discarding the validity of the wish. Like, that's why I'm saying when it says blame it on, like, what's the motivation for this is it's any mental affliction, but particularly ignorance. So I think it's any time like ignorance wins out in your mind, where it's like, no, it doesn't matter how I treat other people or see other people. They're not empty of a nature. My reality isn't completely moldable. I think it's that sort of energy that would fall into breaking this vow, like in a sustained, conscious way.
Yeah. Okay.
Though it does say you can commit this one for just a second, and then the next moment you are no longer a bodhisattva. So it's kind of slippery.
Okay. I don't think that helps me feel better, but I'm sure, like, when you work with them, they kind of, they light up like neon lights, and you're like, oh.
They do, and sometimes not neon lights, but like bumpers at the bowling alley. Like, they're the things that, our minds always want to go into the gutters. Like, they just do. We have eons of the habit of that, of going into the gutter. And it's like, okay, you're starting to put on what are they called? You know what I'm talking about? The like kitty.
Bumpers. Aren't they called like bumpers?
Yeah, those. I know they're designed for kids. I use them when I bowl. And they're kind of that. This is just, it's putting that up in your mind. The gutter is ignorance and just turning around and around in this same cycle until you figure it out. The alternative is, yeah, well, I don't know where this metaphor is going, but you do. Okay, now finally the 4 chains. Does anyone remember the 4 chains? Thanks for playing. We're almost done actually for what I wanted to do today, which is the first half.
You have to know that it's wrong what you're doing, or like you have to have an intention of breaking it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to like be excited about it or something.
Yep. Cool. That's number 3. You have to, you like derive a sense of enjoyment, right? Or like glee from doing the bad thing.
Willing to do it again and again.
Yep, that's how I interpreted what Sarah just said. So you're doing it purposefully, and you'd be willing to do it again. I'll give it to you. You guys, you have 2 of the 4. So the first one, willing to do it again. The second one, not having any shame or consideration about it. And this is actually also a final exam question, the difference between shame and consideration, which are like the ultimate bumpers in your mind, I think, of stopping yourself from doing terrible things, basically. It's either going to be your own conscience that stops you, like, no, I'm not going to steal my roommate's eggs. Doesn't matter if they're not home and they wouldn't notice, I'm just not going to do it. That's one. And then the other one is I care about what others think of me as. Sorry, that was weird. I care what others think of me. Not like in a reputation sense, right? Of like in a performative way, but just really like my reality is interwoven with others, and it matters to me the way they see me and experience me. And that's for that reason, I'm not going to do something bad. We talked about feeling happy about it. And then the last one, maybe this is what you were referring to, Sarah, but it's actually that you don't think that what you're doing is wrong. So you have to have all 4 of those right in your mind as you break, or as you do any of those 18 root downfalls for that vow to actually be broken. Anything else is just the clay pot shattering, and you can put it back together.
Wait, Supriya, just so I can clarify, all of these have to be present, right? Okay.
Yes, all 4 chains need to be present. Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's actually here. So remember we went over like there's different instances of breaking a vow, and so this is exactly what you're asking. The major instance, as in vow completely broken, completely destroyed, you'd have to retake it, would be when all 4 chains are present. All 4 of those mental attitudes are present. There are medium and lesser instances of doing that, which are like different permutations of that.
Cool.
And that actually brings us to the last question I wanted to go over today, because that takes us right through halfway through the final exam, which is saying, okay, well, let's say I do commit a major instance. I do break a vow with all 4 chains present. You're telling me I can just retake the vows, right? And so the question is, why shouldn't we like take solace or find comfort in that fact that, oh, well, I could just retake it. And it's similar. It is exactly what we talked about before, that doesn't mean that the earlier result of disqualifying you from this peak experience of ultimate wisdom and ultimate love, or ultimate wisdom under the influence of ultimate love, that still is, you're still disqualified from that, whether or not you take the vow again. So that should be something that keeps you from breaking these vows in a major way to begin with. And what's kind of cool, like, and is this sort of, I don't know, it's just this buffer that's built into reality right now because of the situation that we're in, is like, right now, you don't have these vows, or most of you don't. So pretend to go through your world as if you have them, and just try to break it with the 4 chains. Like, I'm not encouraging this, but I'm just saying you can do it with the freedom of knowing that this doesn't apply to you yet. So just play and see if you could even do it. I reckon that none of you could actually have those 4 chains in your mind and break one of these vows. That's how I see you, at least. I just don't think you could do it. But if there's any doubt in your mind, just try it for a week. I'm not saying go and try to break the vows. I'm just saying go and try to keep them, and see how much wiggle room and space that they give you. They really do. They're not this thing that's designed to limit your experience of life, right? Of all these restrictions of, oh, now I just can't do all that stuff and I have to do this. The experience I've had with them is they actually have opened up all of this space in my life that was there and I just didn't see it. It elevated all the things I was already doing: socializing, having a livelihood, trying to be a meditator, like having hobbies. It's in those moments that they're like infusing this space to actually practice, to actually kind of elevate everything. I don't know how I got there, but yeah, you have the freedom to try to break these vows because you don't have them yet. So do that until you get some sort of confidence that you wouldn't break them. And then when you take them, that plants an even stronger seed in your mind. And that's the first 14 questions of the final. The final is 27 questions. So we're more than halfway through. Hopefully it's starting to come back a bit. I feel like, yeah, most of you were, I think for up till this point, we were still IRL together. Or at least, I think maybe 4 Chains class, we were in Zoom land, but before that, we were together. So that's bringing back some nice memories. Okay, I put this here just as a reminder. Sorry we didn't get to the meditation, but it was really nice to share and just hear from you all. I feel like that was sort of what we did in replacement of that. How are the meditations, contemplations going? I know I heard from someone, Katie, right, that she's done all of them. Is that you? That's cool. So if anyone has, questions, Katie can be your go-to of how did you do that? What was the process like? Is anyone really struggling with that or like allergic to that component of the course? Just to spell it out clearly again, remember each homework has a meditation associated with it. You have a couple of ways to do that meditation. You could either do it as a 30-minute meditation on the cushion, or as 3 10-minute meditations, or 2 15-minute meditations, all options, or you have the option to do it as a contemplation. It doesn't have to be closed eyes meditation posture. It can be, I put my laundry away and thought about the steps of the vow ceremony for 10 minutes. I'll accept that, no problem. I went on a walk in the park to get some air and I thought about the 4 chains. Fine, just do it and make a note of it and add it to your homework. That's how your homework will be marked as complete. And what I mentioned last week, 5 of them, half of the classes, I'll accept the contemplation as being, I did my 6 times a day book using those vows. Like, for example, there's a homework which is like, review vows, 30 to 45. So if you told me, okay, yeah, for 2 or 3 days, I kept my vow and I went through 6 of them each day, perfect, that's fine. That's even better. It's like you're making it come alive. They're not just a list anymore. And then don't forget to send me questions to share with Hector. I hope that's something that's exciting for you all. I can't tell if it is or not. Your faces aren't revealing anything, but I'm hoping it is. And I think that's all I've got before we dedicate. Any lingering questions, or should we dedicate and then we can stay for those who have questions? Oh, here's another reminder. And it's okay if you didn't join last week, you can join this week. It's a new series that we have going around Buddhist debate and the mechanics of that. It's going to be class 2 tomorrow evening by donation. I believe the sessions are recorded. I don't know, Emmett, if you received the recording yet. I also need the recording actually, but join me if you're interested, because it builds a really great muscle with which to engage with these ideas, right? You can debate someone else or yourself about one of these things. You're going to get some crystal clarity about whether you want to practice it or not. Were you saying something, Emmett? Or someone?
I have not gotten the video.
Okay, I believe there is video. We'll hopefully get our hands on that soon, but all the better if you can join in person. Those are Wednesday evenings. Oops.
Are those recordings on our website, or do you have to send in a request to have them sent to you?
The latter.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's dedicate just at least a moment, come back to whatever meditation you were in, the motivation for coming to class. Connecting with that little sprout inside you, whatever size it may be. That sprout of wisdom, of love, despite all odds, despite all distractions. And feel that any and every moment of these last 2 hours at least was like taking care of that sprout, giving it the sunshine, watering it, protecting it. And just enjoying maybe a pleasurable sensation that comes with the knowledge of having this sprout inside of you. Just imagine what it would be like to give that away. Anyone right now who's afraid or confused, plagued by misunderstanding, suffering, any of the types, that they too remember they possess this capacity. And that your attention, your time, any effort contributes to their awakening, their enlightenment. Sashi, Puki, Jikshing, Metok, Trao, Lingshin, Inde, Empati, Sangye, Shindu, Mikte, Warki, Jokun, Namdak, Shingla, Tripar, Shuk, Idam, Guru, Ratnamandala, Kam, Niyataya, Gewadi, Gewuk, Salam, Yashin, Sok Sok, Shin, Salam, Yashin, Ju, Lampa, Kuni, Topar, Shun. Thank you, thank you, thank you for showing up and reminding each other and yourselves what you're doing with this precious life.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
In a sentence or two, even though I think actually we've covered it a number of times, can you sort of explain what an analytical meditation is?
Yeah, happy to. The simplest way I could describe it is that it's a debate with yourself. It's a debate with yourself, a silent debate with yourself in meditation. So let me try to, let's say I pick the prompt, the sky is blue. And I want to do an analytical meditation on the sky is blue. It would mean I go into meditation, I take my posture, I calm my body, I focus on the breath for a little bit, and then I just bring up that prompt in my mind. Okay, the sky is blue. I think about that for a bit, and then I introduce another voice, which is also my mind, that's saying, no, the sky's not blue. For whatever reason, because it's not blue all the time. So the sky must not be blue. Whatever that is. Then you go back, it's like, then you go back and forth. So you go back to the first voice and you give a reason for why. Oh no, the sky is blue. It's blue because it's actually blue, just it's a reflection of bodies of water. So it appears blue. And things that appear a certain way, they are certain. I don't know, I'm spiraling now, but you're going voice A, voice B, and you're just, it's a conversation between the two of them. And the idea is you do that until you get to a place of understanding in your mind, of some sort of agreement, or just a next level of understanding about what it means for the sky to be blue in this situation. And then you just rest, and that's your meditation. You try to rest there for a bit, that's your meditation. But that's the analytical meditation. It's like a back and forth silent debate with yourself about a specific topic. So as long as you're reaching some sort of understanding about that topic, you're in the meditation. Your task is to just not go on tangents, basically, in an analytical meditation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, they're fun. I actually really like those types of meditations, especially if you're really like brainy, which a lot of you are, myself included. They're really fun.
Anyway, thank you very much for tonight's class.
Yeah, of course, Tom. Nice to see you.
Likewise.
Thank you, Supriya. Good night.
Night, Suzanne. Take care.
Supriya, I have a question that's, obviously related to everything, but not this class in particular. Can I ask?
Yeah, please.
It just came up in my mind while we were talking. So I haven't really studied anything about past and future lives, but I was just curious, does everyone start from the same place, or do some people have like a head start? So do some people have more lives than others, or do we all start at the same place and some people get out of suffering faster?
Okay, I'll try. I don't know the answer, so I'm just gonna break it down based on my understanding of past and future lives, which is it's really cool, but it's hard because whenever you get to time in Buddhism, the answer is often that time is beginningless and endless.
Okay.
So you've had as many past lives as there has been time, but time is beginningless. So you've had past lives since beginningless time.
Okay.
And the idea is you would have future lives until endless future, unless and until you completely eject yourself from that cycle, right? Because the past and future lives are all happening within this cycle of samsara. They're caused, and they're the result of something. And it can boil down to an attachment to this life and the way things appear in it. That's what triggers the next life. However you're forced to experience it. You might get to experience it as an animal, or as a human, or as a pleasure being, or what have you. And so then your question being, does anyone get a head start? Others feel free to chime in here, because I'm just thinking out loud. I think we'll get into this a lot, hopefully in next course, Death in the Realms, because I think it comes up. There is a whole course called Past and Future Lives, ACI 4.
Are you teaching class? Mackenzie asked.
What did you ask, Mackenzie?
If you're teaching Death in the Realms.
I don't know. I don't know if I am.
Oh, okay. Anyways, let's keep going on this. I like this.
Well, someone needs to give me a lifeboat. I'm trying to think. So your next question was, does everyone have the same amount?
Yeah, it was kind of like if we were considering existence as running on a track in a competition, like does everyone start from the same marker, or do some people, get a 20-minute head start so they're able to get out of suffering faster, essentially, or like before others, rather?
I was thinking that an enlightened being sees everyone as being enlightened, right? So we're all the same in their eyes, but there was no, like, even though we may see ourselves as a suffering schmuck, as Hector would say, I think it's that, yeah, in my mind, that means that we're all enlightened. We just are seeing ourselves as not yet or something.
Okay.
Like, yeah. I feel like we start off in that place and that we're just trying to kind of realize that.
Okay.
I was going to say a flavor of that, which is like the annoying answer, but that the number of lives you see someone else have or not have is also a projection of your mind forced on you by your karma.
Okay.
So that would be like the most airtight answer I could think, but I feel like Emmett has something to say, or I hope Emmett has something to say.
Sure. I thought it might come to me. So if there's like, Supriya was kind of pointing to it, different schools are going to answer that question differently, depending on the level of subtlety that they talk about emptiness. But the big thing in past and future lives is that you and every being have had infinite past lives, and there's proofs for that in a couple different places. But infinite means like like the entirety of all of them. Like, like numbers go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then infinity is all of them. So in terms of like how many, we say like, okay, the Buddha became enlightened, Gautama Buddha was enlightened 500 BC, and now it's 2020. Have I had more lives than he did? It would still be that, like, Gautama Buddha would say, I had infinite past lives. Okay. So it's the same number of past lives, quote unquote. And then there's like, once you get kind of on the other side of that, it's like, well, it's a Buddha. It's like he's not bound by time and space. He's there's infinite. There's like all our reality, and then infinity is outside of that. When they say like at the